And away we go. Hope you're having a good day. Kind of a cruddy weather day here in the area. Sean Stiers, Jesse Stiers, along with me here today. We've got Notre Dame and Arkansas kicking off at noon Eastern time this Saturday, right here on this here station, Sports Radio WSBT, the flagship station for Notre Dame football, Sunny 101.5 here in the South Bend market as well. And, of course, the Odyssey app, AUDACY. That is Saturday at noon. That means game day coverage, 8 a.m. Coffee and donuts for your game day this week. Join Tim Grau, Jim Irizarry, Eric Hansen, Tyler Horka, and all the great guests they have on every week before the Irish take on the Razorbacks for the first time ever this Saturday. That is a noon kickoff. We get our first noon kickoff of the year, Jesse. We go from some late nights to noon. Are you into the noon?
I'm here for whatever gets the football done the fastest.
Whatever gets it done, you're in on it.
I don't care if it's morning, night, international, domestic.
Just get it there.
Just want to watch some good football at the end of the day. I care about Notre Dame winning. And I care about Notre Dame.
It's kind of a high standard these days, watching good football. I don't know if I've seen any, and I haven't seen a whole lot of good football, regardless of what teams that I'm watching. It feels like so far through the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season.
Good offense is I think what I should amend it to.
True. We've got some breaking news coming into today's show. Vince D'Addario's injury status has been upgraded. He has been out since going under the knife at the end of last week. He has been upgraded to questionable, and sources say he could make an appearance on tomorrow's show. Sources say he is on track to make an appearance on tomorrow's show, actually. So that's very good news.
The man never stops, even when he has his appendix removed.
I know. He's just grinding it out. Gritty Gutty Vinny D. That's who he is.
He's really what he's doing is he's soaking up that time off away from the day job, so he's got a little bit of extra time for the IB crew.
Yes. Some questions about Vince, and I know that there was obviously some stuff on the Champions Lounge that Brian Driscoll posted up there last week. I will let Vince say whatever he feels comfortable saying in terms of what happened and all that kind of stuff on tomorrow's show. He did definitely have his appendix out. There were some other things that have gone along with it. So I'll let Vince say what Vince wants to say tomorrow. And in the meantime, Henry can just yap at us in the background. Jesse is here for the first hour. Trevor Trowbridge is going to be along for the second hour in rapid fire today. So we've got a little bit of a split show, because Jesse still believes he is a volleyball player and he has to get out. Is this volleyball playoffs? Is that what's going on?
Playoffs, Final Four.
Okay. All right. Today is Shamrock up, Shamrock down. It's our weekly stock check of Notre Dame football. Who's up? Who's down? I got to get my thumbs right. Who's up? Who's down? All that kind of good stuff. I just want to start with this, Jesse, because we've talked about a lot of different people. Stock up, stock down, Shamrock up, Shamrock down. The first few times that we've done this, we haven't really talked at all about quarterback coach Gino Guidugli. And I've got to tell you, I feel like when you watch CJ Carr out there on Saturdays, Gino Guidugli's got a big stock up in my book. What do you think?
I mean, you can make the argument that Gino Guidugli is the biggest stock up coordinator, position coach at the moment. I mean, we've talked about, Notre Dame's lack of quarterback development over the last 4, 5, 6 seasons. The last two, we really couldn't help because you get Sam Hartman and Riley Leonard. So it's like you're kind of just doing what the cards are dealt type situation. But now we're in a full-blown, CJ Carr quarterback development, someone that is going to be the starter for at least 2, maybe even 3 years. And to see how prepared and ready he was for the season opener on the road. But not only that, but the continuous improvement from week to week, I really think shows, how valuable Gino Guidugli has been in CJ Carr's development.
No, absolutely. I mean, the guy's completing 66% of his passes. Look at what he did first play of the game last week. Go a little play action, drop the the deep bomb on the money, by the way. Like in that bucket, he dropped it. He's got over 700 yards and 5 touchdown passes through his first 3 career games. And as you said, he just looks a little bit better every week. And like when you think about Geno, because of the fact that he inherited Sam Hartman and because of the fact he inherited Riley Leonard, I think that there were some questions on both of those guys. Maybe especially starting with Sam Hartman, because we expected more from a guy like Hartman who had been around as much as he had. I just feel like when you look at him specifically, Hartman, I think, hit his ceiling when he was at Wake Forest. So there was only so much by the time he got here that Gino Guidugli was going to be able to do.
Yeah, I mean, you're not really going to alter a guy who's like in his 6th year or whatever it was at that point.
Exactly. And Riley Leonard, I feel like still has like there's still room for him to keep growing. Obviously, that's going to have to happen at the professional level for him to continue to elevate his game. But I do feel like there was some definite pushback, especially last year on Guidugli, because of the fact that Riley Leonard wasn't a better passer than what he was. He wasn't even as good a passer as he was when he was at Duke in his last year, his junior year at Duke. But I do think that injury, the foot injury that he had, that played a bigger part in it than anything that Guidugli did or didn't do.
So you kind of took some of the firepower that I was going to kind of get into. Like Sam Hartman, he kind of was, what it was by that point. There really wasn't much that Gino Guidugli was going to do to help or alter, his kind of gameplay. I would say there was maybe a little bit of a disappointment and not a lot of progression in Riley Leonard's passing game last season. How much of that is tailored around what they were trying to accomplish as an offense, we'll never know. But I do think that, like, even though Riley Leonard didn't maybe get better in the passing department, I still feel like Riley Leonard got better as an overall quarterback last season.
He did.
And I think that's some of that stuff you can attribute to Gino Guidugli day in and day out, spending time with him in the film room, that sort of stuff. But really, it's like, if you look at it, Gino Guidugli had, I'm pretty sure year 1 was the Jared Parker offense with Sam Hartman. So you get a 1-year quarterback. Last year was Mike Denbrock year 1, Riley Leonard 1-year quarterback. Now you're finally in a consistent offensive coordinator, and you have a quarterback that's not just going to be here for 1 year and get the heck out of here, right? Like, this is a guy that CJ Carr is more like clay. You can mold him, while some of these other guys weren't clay. They were more, rigid. That there wasn't much that they could, be fixed or tweaked at the end of the day. So I guess another aspect of this, do you get to claim, Steve Angeli and Kenny Minchie under this umbrella as well? Because, Steve Angeli did go on before, the injury. He was lighting it up at Syracuse. Obviously a guy who spent a lot of time in Gino Guidugli's quarterback room. And I said this yesterday. I mean, if Angeli had the success that he did, and CJ Carr is having the success that he's having, and it was really this tight competition, then Kenny Minchie is going to go somewhere and play quarterback as well. So again, another quarterback under, I think, Guidugli's umbrella, that even though they're not starters out there on the field, he still had a part in developing.
I absolutely do think that Gino Guidugli gets to claim at least part of Steve Angeli. He had to go someplace else, but look, Angeli was at Notre Dame for 3 years. Then a big part of his development as a quarterback happened here under Gino Guidugli. So it might have taken him transferring someplace else to go out and show what he could do. And as we talked about yesterday, unfortunately, that's cut short now by his Achilles injury. But yes, I think he absolutely gets to claim at least 50% of that, don't you? Like, if not even more. I mean, Steve Angeli's completed, he had over 1,300 yards already in his time at Syracuse with 10 touchdown passes. Now, again, factor in kind of who some of the competition was.
He was lighting up Clemson.
But still, yeah, he was taking it right to Clemson. So, yeah, I think the Guidugli definitely gets to claim some of that. I mean, this is Angeli's, first month or what, with another program since leaving Notre Dame at the end of the spring.
I think the biggest knock on him is going to be the Sam Hartman situation. And it was just so unfortunate because, it was a lot of, you got a first-time OC. It was Gino's first year. It was Sam Hartman's first year at Notre Dame. He's coming from a system where he only played, one style of quarterback for 4 or 5 seasons. I saw someone in the chat say this. I just wish we had Riley Leonard for 2 years and Sam Hartman. Like, I nothing against Sam Hartman. I think he's a great guy. Obviously, he's on an NFL roster right now, has a ton of talent. I just don't think that his throwing, the way he wanted to run offense doesn't fit what Marcus Freeman wants to do in an offense at the end of the day. And I think that having Riley Leonard for another year, potentially, like, we could have seen even more results last season, I guess is what I'm getting at. But
Hartman helped fill a gap. And I mean, I agree. It would have been nice to have Riley Leonard for 2 years, but at the same time, Leonard, obviously, like, he was still developing in his own right at Duke. And then with the Elko move, decided to make his own move and go someplace else. It's, he kind of needed that, like those JV reps basically at Duke before he was ready to finally move on that last year. But I think everybody turned out okay. I agree. Hartman filled he was a short-term stopgap, but again, I feel like he had already reached his ceiling at Wake Forest in a very distinct system that was not the same kind of system. Like, biggest thing with him, I've said this before, is his inability to really read defenses any better than what he did. But again, I feel like that system that he was in at Wake Forest helped compensate for some of that. There wasn't as much on him when he was there in that slow mesh.
Right.
Who are some defensive players whose stock rose this week for Notre Dame, do you think? As much as we criticize the defense, I feel like there were still some individuals who we can name in this.
I have like 3 to 4 guys, to be honest with you.
I do too. I'm curious to see what yours are.
I'll start up front. I thought Elijah Hughes played a great game, number 56. I even texted you that during the middle of the game. I thought he was tremendous. Finally saw some production off the edge. I would start with Elijah Hughes. Do you want to go kind of back and forth, or do you want me to just rattle all of mine off?
Sure. I think Elijah Hughes is a good one. Jared Dawson ended up not playing, and I don't know that we got full explanation of exactly why he didn't play, but Elijah Hughes made the most. He kind of came out of nowhere and really made the most of his opportunities. It felt like, especially defensively, they really gave a closer look to some different guys last week because the personnel in some spots was so different. Now, some of it was, of course, out of complete necessity when you've got a banged up secondary. Dallas Golden is an easy one.
Yeah, I mean, that's like I'm glad that we can all agree on that. I mean, Marcus Freeman hit on this during the press conference yesterday. They literally taught him nickel in 1 week, and he played 67 snaps. That's big stock up, in my opinion.
Got his first
as a true freshman.
Reception. Yep, exactly. All right, who's your next one?
The next guy I'd go with, I'm trying to go kind of at every level. I'm going to go with Madden Faremo as well because
me too.
He did get some playing time, and I thought he really capitalized on that playing time. Like, while the snaps were limited, he freaking tipped a ball, and they got an interception off of it while, like, in the first couple plays that he was on the field. So, it doesn't matter how many snaps you get. It's a matter of what you do with those snaps, especially considering how young he is. And I thought he looked great when he was out there on the field.
I completely agree. I mean, he came out, I think it was either his second or third snap where he came up with that deflection that Christian Gray intercepted. So, I mean, you talk about making some immediate impact. They kind of tried to go right at him. He was right there in coverage, did his job. And then in the second half, it's not like he piled up a bunch of tackles or anything, but he played well. He moved well in space and did what they asked him to do. I think Kingston Viliamu-Asa's stock was already pretty up. But again,
it's neutral.
Yeah, I think at the maybe a slight bump just because we saw a little bit.
Didn't show me something that he hasn't already. I know what KVA can do out there. It's just a matter of if they increase his snaps, can he be consistent / take his game to kind of that next level?
ND Forever 72 in the YouTube chat says Tay Johnson will make the list soon. What do you think? Is Johnson on this list this week? Did you leave him off stock up?
No, I brought him onto this list.
I've got him as well.
And he was actually the last guy on my list. So I had Elijah Hughes, Tay Johnson, Dallas Golden, and Madden Framo. I'm putting Tay Johnson on this list because he still got the start, right, while Don Schuler was out. And again, I didn't think that Tay Johnson was ever the liability or the issue. I know the secondary struggled as a group, but it never felt like Tay Johnson was the guy who was getting burned in coverage or burned over top, or a guy that was just having an overall bad day like maybe some of the other guys in the secondary. But the reason why I have to say this is he's still getting valuable game experience, and he's not a complete liability out there. The coaching staff can trust him. Mm-hmm. I think the defense can trust him. And so, he's a guy where I'm going to be lenient on and say, okay, I'm not expecting you to be perfect right now every rep, considering how young you are, and you're starting in place for a guy like a Don Schuler. So he still made my list.
No, he made mine as well. And look, there's still some things going on, obviously, in the secondary in terms of communication and knowing who's supposed to be where and all those kind of things. It is pretty well documented at this point. It's what one of the things that they've got to figure out. DJ says Donovan Hinish played well, and when you consider the fact that they were asking a nose guard to go out, they kept dropping him, with zone blitzes into different coverage spaces. Like, you would have thought Donovan Hinish was a linebacker, the way they were asking him to defend the flat sometimes and doing some of those things when they were dropping him off. So I don't know. What did you think of what you saw from him? Is that a yes or a no?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing with Hinish, Hinish would be a no for me, just because I've seen him do better. I've seen him play at a higher level. He's just kind of doing what he's told at this point, and he's not. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary for Hinish.
Okay. What about offensive players with a stock up? My two easy ones were Jadarian Price and Jordan Faison. Like, Faison already, they both had pretty good stock already. But when you're Jadarian Price and you only touch the ball 9 times and you score 3 rushing touchdowns and average over 8 yards a carry, and then, oh, by the way, you also become just the 4th player ever in the history of Notre Dame football to return a kickoff for at least 100 yards, I think that's pretty easy stock up.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go with Jadarian Price. He was kind of my front runner. I mean, just the way that he can, be the 1-2 punch with Love and still be, 8-9 yards per carry. But really what set me over the edge is he got a touchdown in special teams too. I mean, a guy who has 3 rushing touchdowns and a special teams touchdown combines for 4 touchdowns has to be a stock up no matter who you're playing. The next guy on my list would actually be Gerby Lambert. I thought amongst the offensive linemen, he was the most consistent, the guy who, when they're pulling those guards, he kind of reminds me of Zach Martin. Once he gets his hands on you, he's just not going to let go, and you're just kind of SOL at that point. So
yeah,
I like Faison too, just because of not only is, there's obvious expectations as a route runner, but the way that he blocks on the perimeter, very selfless guy. And, Notre Dame runs the ball the best, obviously, when their wide receivers are, blocking well. And I think Faison was a guy who blocked better than, any wide receiver out there on Saturday.
I agree. I think that that continues to be an underrated aspect. And Marcus Freeman did mention that in his press conference yesterday about some of the blocking of the wide receivers. That's still vital, because we typically tend to talk more about the offensive linemen and their ability to block, but the wide receivers are a big part of that as well. And Faison has he's been very consistent, and he just turned in a 100-yard game. And as we know, we haven't seen 100-yard games for Notre Dame wide receivers very often over the last few years. So to go 5 catches for 105 yards, we almost saw 2. Like, if Malachi Fields, like, I thought for a while we might end up seeing 2 running backs and 2 receivers have a chance to crack 100 yards. Didn't quite get there, but the fact that you had a 100-yard running back in Jeremiah Love and a 100-yard receiver in Jordan Faison in the same game, pretty impressive. I tell you what, we'll take a timeout. When we come back, we'll continue Shamrock up, Shamrock down. Whose stock took the biggest hit this week? And who's maybe an under-the-radar stock-up guy who we haven't mentioned yet? I don't know if you've got someone for this, but I definitely have my answer for that one.
I got mine. I don't think a lot of people are going to be happy with it, but I got mine.
Oh, boy. All right. I already know where you're going then. We'll do that when we return. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com continues, along with Jesse Stiers, Sean Stiers. It is Shamrock Up, Shamrock Down Day. It is our weekly stock check of Notre Dame football coming out of each week's game. We've hit some stock ups. We haven't hit the stocks down yet, but I did want to put this one up here from the YouTube chat. Werewolf in the YouTube chat. For his stock up, he said Drake Bowen for letting his teammates shine. I do feel like we've got to put Drake Bowen on the, I know this is going to hurt you, we've got to put him on the stock down list, I feel like, this week. 40 snaps against Purdue, just one tackle. The only way he showed up in the stat sheet was that one tackle. We were looking during the weather break the other night at the live stats, and you only show up on the screen in the live stats if you have recorded a stat. And with a minute 31 to go before halftime, Drake Bowen had no stat show up. He was not on that live stat screen. Not the best game for Drake Bowen. I don't know what exactly is going on with him so far, Jess.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for a linebacker to shine when teams' game plan is just to throw the ball all over you. How are you supposed to rack up tackles when balls are being thrown 20, 30 yards downfield? Like, it's a tough position to be at as a linebacker. And we've talked about it. They've done a good job in the rush defense as well. So, is he as productive as he was last season? Of course not. But I think as the secondary starts to what's the best word? Improve, get better. I think you'll naturally see Drake Bowen's game get better. But I will say I would like to see him, if he's going to be blitzing or doing that kind of, fill in the A gap immediately type situation, I'd like to see him use a little bit more finesse, work some moves, get to the quarterback, create pressure, sacks, that sort of stuff. But again, I find it hard for a linebacker to be super productive when teams are throwing the ball a lot.
I get what you're saying, but Purdue did run the ball 28 times. I mean, that's a prime opportunity for a linebacker to at least get half a tackle in there. They threw the ball 40 times. They ran the ball 28 times. So there were ample opportunities for him to get his nose in there and make a tackle. He just unfortunately was not able to do it. Who do you put on your own stock down list?
I think the biggest guys on my stock down list right now is actually going to be Jalen Sneed.
On my list,
a guy who wasn't out there with the ones this week. There's always kind of discussion about in his first few years of whether or not he was going to be a starter, if he's not going to be a starter. He ended up being the starter alongside Drake Bowen this season. And I think the nicest way to put it is you see guys like KVA, Osbury, now Madden Frame out there, making plays, and you don't really see Jalen Sneed making a lot of plays. So I have to go stock down on him. I'm not trying to, get up here and be rude, but that's just kind of the nature of the beast right now. I just think there's younger linebackers that are just as talented or productive as them. So why not just put them out there and bite the bullet, because they've got more tick left in their clock.
Here's my question to you, with what is obviously, there is some complexity to this defense that they're being asked to run, this particular scheme that they're being asked to run. Like for guys like for either one of these guys we just talked about, the linebackers, Bowen and Sneed, is there too much read and react as opposed to just letting them go out there and make plays like they were accustomed to doing the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think that probably plays into it, a little bit. It's hard anytime you're transitioning between defenses, and I think that's why it's frustrating even more, is because all offseason, we were spoon-fed that this is predominantly the same. This is a Notre Dame defense, and now you see guys out there in the secondary, linebackers, defensive line, struggling to get pressure, struggling to make reads, struggling to understand their assignments and coverage. And so I think it's affecting everyone, across the board, and probably why, we're just seeing a downtick overall in everyone's play defensively right now.
Do you have anybody else on your stock down list?
Some other guys on the stock down list. he was kind
They
of my
brought up
main
Bryce Young.
guy.
Like I feel like I think your internet connection's just a little bit off. We're chopping a little bit. I did want to bring up Bryce Young. He finished the game better, but overall, like he kind of falls into the Snead Bowen department in terms of we thought we were going to see a lot more production from him so far.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's someone we had, a little bit loftier of expectations for, and we just quite haven't seen the production yet. So, I can get in on Bryce Young. I guess I'm looking more so kind of in the secondary. Christian Gray right now, to be honest with you. I know he had the interception last game, but last week you really needed him to step up, especially with a Don Schuler out in the first half. Obviously, Leonard Moore didn't play. Devontae Smith didn't play. I just expect more out of Christian Gray with the amount of experience he has. And maybe this, again, goes back to just Ash not having a real good understanding of his secondary and what his players are good and not good at, because, even last season we saw Christian Gray struggle at times, but we didn't really see him struggle, I think, as much as we have early on this season. Like he just looks lost sometimes for a guy who played really well down the stretch last season. So I have to go, kind of combining his experience. He's not a true freshman. He's got games under his belt, and just to continue to see him not be a leader out there when he needs to be, I have to be kind of stocked down on him.
Yeah, I agree. Scott L. Esquire says Stroman stocked down, and I agree to that, and I agree with what he's saying. I think he should only play strong safety. Notre Dame has him at free safety, and obviously the other day, because of the challenge of the fact that you had a Don Schuler out, I think that that added to some of that. Like there are like two more gears for I think everyone in the secondary to go to. It is distressing that secondary is supposed to be Chris Ash's strength, and with him running this defense, we have seen just utter confusion everywhere in terms of.
Well, the thing is I don't even think it's like Al Golden praised these guys last season for how smart they were defensively and how they could understand concepts and schemes that are probably beyond the college level. And so, whatever Chris Ash is presenting, I have a hard time believing that these guys can't wrap their head around it. I just, something is not clicking of, it's like trying to take a circle peg and fit it into a square peg is really what feels like the issue is right now, is that Chris Ash is trying to jam a certain style of defense that I just don't think really bodes well with what they have, overall in the room. But to kind of go to continue down this train of stock down, I think this is an obvious one, but I think Carson Hobbs has to be on this list because he didn't even get a snap last game.
True.
And, like we saw him kind of have his struggles against Texas A&M. They're banged up, they're depleted in the secondary, and he didn't even get the opportunity to go out on the field. So I think that's pretty clear writing on the wall that his stock is down when, you're trying to replenish the secondary because of injuries, and he didn't even touch a snap out there last week. So I think Carson Hobbs is definitely on my stock down as well.
Who's your like under the radar stock up guy? You said you had someone that might get people stirred up a little bit.
Yeah, this is gonna, I think, rub people the wrong way. I think Mark Zachary is a prime example, the freshman corner. He's been having his troubles out there. I think that's obvious. But I think the best thing that he's getting right now as a true freshman is just exposure, game reps. He's super talented. He was, considered a good recruit coming out of high school. I think he's going to get this thing turned around. There's just growing pains right now in this very moment. He's being thrust into a tough situation because the more experienced players are obviously struggling in the secondary, and he's having his struggles as well. But I think he's going to be able to turn it around and provide some good quality depth at the cornerback position. And then last but not least, I just have to say Madden Framo, because I think he's going to continue to get more opportunities. And I think that you should buy his stock now because I think it's getting ready to explode by the end of the season.
I went a little bit different route with my under the radar stock up, and another guy who we haven't talked about is the special teams coordinator, Marty Biaggi. And look what's happened 2 weeks in a row. Now, it helps when you've got Jadarian Price returning your kickoffs, but 2 weeks in a row, the defense, or not the defense, the special teams has scored touchdowns. You had the Logan Thomas block punt against Texas A&M that Tay Johnson took in for a touchdown, and then Jadarian Price took one back to the house, obviously, against Purdue last week. So 2 weeks in a row, special teams has come up with some big plays. It feels like they're like it's not that James Rendell, like, did he punt? I'm trying to remember how much he even punted the other day, but like his punting has looked a lot more consistent. Feels like that they're just kind of leaving him alone and letting him do his thing out there. There were no punts. 0 punts against Purdue the other day. But Marty Biaggi, again, under radar, stock up. I am Tenzin says, and the missed field goal. Well, we're gonna put that on the special teams coordinator that the kicker missed the field goal. And remember, we had a backup out there in the game because of the fact that the starter was not the game. So
is that an issue though? Like back-to-back years, both kickers have had some sort of injury related problems.
It is a little odd. I no idea where it came from, but they both had like.
What, are they having these guys just kick field goals for 2 straight hours during practice every day? Like, what's going on out there?
I am Tenzin is asking. We're going to put the block punt on Biaggi. Well, I mean, like, you don't think that the special teams coordinator has anything to do with the scheme that they're drawing up when they're attacking the punt and putting the right people in place to go out there and make those plays. So we're going to blame all the coaches for everything else that goes wrong, but we're not going to credit the special teams coordinator when something like that goes right. I think you have to give him some credit for that. All right. We'll take our final break of this hour, and then we'll hear a couple comments from Marcus Freeman, including that staff meeting that he talked about at his press conference yesterday. That we'll hear his thoughts on that when we return. Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com continues, winding down the first hour of the show. Trevor Trowbridge is going to be in for rapid fire for the second hour of the show. Jesse Stiers along with me right now, and we're going to hear from Marcus Freeman here in just a second. But I wanted to throw this comment from the YouTube chat. There is a someone going by the handle of Chris Ash in the YouTube chat the last couple of days, and Joe Allen says, I love it when DK shows up as his alter ego. There's been a lot of speculation over the last few months since the handle formerly known as DK disappeared from the YouTube chats as to, is DK still alive but going by another handle in the chat? And there have been plenty of different handles that have popped up under suspicion.
I figured him out, and that's why he had to recently change his name.
You think so? Because the one that you told me recently, I saw them both in there yesterday. So,
well, that was the beginning. At the beginning, I said at that name, and I said, I figured you out. And then he said, crap, I'm going to have to change my name. And that's when we saw the emergence of Chris Ash into the chat.
Interesting.
He linked his hand last week. He linked it when he said, I have an IB journal that I jot things down. And I said, that sounds awfully familiar.
Oh, so you added that person and then he said, you've got me figured out?
He did. It was, the chat was flying yesterday.
Okay.
So I don't think many people saw it, but
okay. All right. Well, we had some comments from Marcus Freeman's Monday press conference, of course, on yesterday's show, because that's what we do on Monday. We play and discuss a lot of his different comments. He also talked yesterday about a meeting he had with his defensive staff on Sunday. And this has obviously generated, some discussion from Notre Dame fans. We didn't get this yesterday. This is part of a much longer response he gave, to the defense and getting things figured out and stuff like that. But here is the specific comment about the defensive meeting that he had.
Things take time. You learn from being exposed sometimes. You learn from that. And that goes for our defense, period. Not even a player. It goes for our defense, period. And I remember when I was the defense coordinator here. Those first two games were rough, right? And there's heat, right? And it's hot in that chair. But as I said earlier, you got one or two options. You double down on what you believe and you get the people you're leading to believe in what you're doing, or you point fingers. And I know the result of both. I know it. And so we have to do that. And that's what we spent a lot of time doing yesterday as a defensive staff. It's not a comfortable meeting, and I didn't want it to be comfortable. But we got one or two options, as I told them. We're going to do this and get our guys better and believe in what we're doing, or we'll separate. And if we separate, it's not going to be good for anybody. It's not. And so that's what now it's got to trickle down to our players. That's got to trickle down to our players, because outside of the football facility, you know what it is. We got blame. Somebody's got to take blame. Somebody's got to take blame. That's our world. Somebody's taking blame, So they're hearing that.
All right. So there's Marcus Freeman talking about that defensive staff meeting. I don't know about you, Jesse. It reminded me a little bit of Jack Shepard's "If we don't live together, we're going to die alone" speech in Lost. Like hearing him talk about it there. So what do you think hearing that? He said, not a comfortable meeting. Who do you think that meeting was most uncomfortable for?
Well, I think obviously Chris Ash.
Do you? Like, listening to it, that's not what it felt like to me. I don't know.
Who would you pick then?
I'm not picking a particular person. Like, I almost wonder if it's, like the rest of the guys on the staff, it's like, this is what we're doing. Everybody needs to get on board. Like, I think people have taken it as, like maybe it wasn't comfortable for Chris Ash. I don't know. Like, I think it's very open to interpretation. I think that people want to believe that, that it had to do with Ash being the one on the uncomfortable.
You think it was just like everyone in the room and saying like we all have to buy in as a group, like that kind of conversation. Like all the way from, defensive coordinator to position coaches to analysts to like, is that kind of what you
I
would
don't
say
know.
is?
I don't know, Jet. What's your interpretation?
It's really hard to say because he's so vague most of the time. And so,
Right.
obviously the writing on the wall and
And
the
we're left
easy
to
answer.
interpret it as we, do with our own biases, I guess.
Yeah, I think that it probably was uncomfortable for everyone in the room because it's no longer, just kumbaya or any of that. Like, they need to challenge each other. They need to think critically, and they need to all be on the same page at the end of the day. And no more, I think the finger pointing rant that he went on was also very pointed because I feel like they sat down and probably it was, well, this is, they're doing this and they're doing that. And I think he just kind of overall got mad in general and said, we're kind of one big defensive unit and we need to start acting like a defensive unit. But, if we're being honest, like, I don't know how Al Washington and Chris Ash weren't the most uncomfortable in the room because all he's talking about is the marriage between the defensive line and the secondary. And Chris Ash is obviously the secondary coach, or has the secondary background. Obviously, Mickens is the secondary coach, but I think Al Washington is someone that has to feel uncomfortable as well because the defensive line just isn't getting any pressure. None of those guys are creating havoc. None of their stunts are getting home. They're not winning one-on-one battles. And so I think it's, those guys had to be the most uncomfortable. And I think that trickles down a lot to position coaches because at the end of the day, they're the ones teaching the actual technique to the players. It's not like Chris Ash is out there going drill by drill to each position and showing these guys. It's a collective effort.
Yeah. And that's, maybe it's just everyone is under the gun here because no one is performing, and that's where the discomfort comes from. But again, it like there's obviously a disconnect from what, like we talked about, and like he's talked about quite a bit with the front end and the back end, even though we didn't get any more clarity on that than what we had. But there's just so much more confusion this year across the defense, and it feels like that is one of the bigger overlying issues to me.
I want to ask you something because I feel like I've seen some of this going around, and I apologize for being a little off script here, but did you have problem with Marcus Freeman's overall message yesterday, and did you feel like it was very similar to maybe one Brian Kelly?
What do you mean by his overall message?
I think there's a consensus of people who either believe Marcus Freeman is blaming his players and not blaming enough on Chris Ash directly. And I think there's other people who would say he's just kind of blaming everyone. It's the coaches, it's the players, it's the whole, group. And a big complaint with Brian Kelly was he was the first guy to throw his buses under first guy to throw his players under the bus. I didn't get that vibe for him yesterday. I didn't feel like he was. I know he talked about technique, he talked about execution and having to clean those things up. And we talked a lot yesterday about, the blame that goes around. But, I'm just not necessarily in the understanding that he was just straight up throwing his players under the bus. Like
I don't
Brian
think he
Kelly
was.
used to.
I don't think he was either. I don't think he was by any means. But again, if you saw him Saturday, both in that NBC interview that he did on live TV during the weather delay and in his press conference, that was probably, and this was after a win. Remember, they won the game, but that was about as animated as we've probably seen Marcus Freeman before, like in a press conference setting. He was visibly upset. He was obviously upset. There were a couple of tangents he went on Saturday, and we played one of them yesterday, where like he just went, like you gave him an opening and he just went with it. And I've talked before, like Brian Kelly, by Monday, he was always much better. It was like the emotion of the game. That's where he really aired some people out. And I don't feel like Marcus Freeman ever crossed those lines. It felt more to me again, like when he was talking about the defense and the issues, like Saturday felt much more to me like he was up to like he was an 11 out of 10, in terms of his disgust with what was going on with the defense and maybe even with Chris Ash. He removed the emotion from it, and I felt like yesterday at his Monday press conference, again, he's not just going to air everybody out. I think he talks about execution because he doesn't want to start pointing fingers publicly at anybody. So that's kind of the easy fallback crutch word to use. And I think when he talks about execution, even though it can come off as maybe he's saying it's the players, I feel like he's talking about everybody, like the players, the coaches, everybody is what he's talking about. But again, there's like only so many ways he can go when he wants to be as honest as possible, but he's also not going to air anybody out when he's standing there with cameras on him and a microphone in front of him.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. And I love that he gets fired up. He should never be satisfied after wins, after losses. I think that's what the great coaches do. And if you could scroll back up in the chat a little bit, David Webb posted a comment, and I really liked it. He said, Freeman just sounded like he's scared of losing the players' buy-in, that they're going to agree with the outside noise and narrative. And to me, that was like, honestly, one of the biggest points and one of the better ways to summarize it is I think that when there's not a lot of success on the field and players are questioning what's going on, they are going to they're not going to buy in. They're going to lose that kind of confidence. And he talked about that a lot yesterday. Is they need everyone to buy in. And he kept going like this. Everyone needs to be like this. Everyone
right.
needs to be
interlocking,
synchronized. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing is they have to trust what they're doing internally and not listen to the outside noise and continue to buy in and fix, what they have going on.
Yeah. And I mean, part of that showed up in that clip that we played about that defensive meeting that he had. He started talking about players hearing the outside noise and all that kind of stuff, and they know who the finger's being pointed at. And again, he's trying to keep them as immune to it as possible when it's almost impossible to keep them immune to that, because they're like, they walk around a campus where everybody's talking about football, or where 90, however many percent of the people are talking about football, and all those things start happening. Like I remember, again, this just shows how old I am, but I remember back in my day when Carlisle Holiday was the quarterback and Brady Quinn was the backup, like Carlisle Holiday was walking around campus and people were wearing shirts that said, the holiday's over, Quinn to win, and Carlisle Holiday talked about that and joked about it at a press conference, so it's like those kind of things. You're on a campus and it's Notre Dame football. These things are going to be talked about by the student body, by everybody. So and especially and that was really even pre-social media and everything else that's going on right now. So you could still shelter them a little bit from that, but it's a lot harder right now.
Just wanted your input on that.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Well, Jesse's got to run. Trevor Trowbridge sitting in the on-deck circle. He'll be in next. We've got Rapid Fire coming up in hour 2. Enjoyed it as always, Jesse. I will talk to you later.
Adios.
All right. Hour number 2, Rapid Fire with Trevor Trowbridge. Coming up next, Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. It is hour number 2 of Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com, and that means rapid fire time. And Trev Trowbridge is in the house to do a little rapid fire. How's it going, man?
Oh, it's good, man. It's good to be back. Good to be back. Good to see you. How you doing?
It's been a while. Doing good. Good to see you once again.
Yeah, it has been a minute. Happy to be doing a rapid fire today, man. It's going to be fun.
All right, absolutely. Well, I tell you what, we've spent a lot of time the last couple days talking about the defense. Let's start with this question. Fill in the blank. Notre Dame's offense is blank through the first 3 games of the season.
I guess I'll have to go with exciting, man. I mean, Sean, you and I talked a lot before the season started, and it was a lot of how does CJ Carr get adjusted, redshirt freshman quarterback, year 2 of Mike Denbrock. But then the default was they got Jeremiah Love. We know they're going to be able to run the football, and the defense is going to be stout. And you kind of flip that on its head, and now we're we're only 3 games into the season. I mean, it feels like they've played 8 already with how stressed we've all been. But now we're looking at this, talking about how now we're looking at this, staring down the barrel of them having 9 regular season games. I was like, well, they're just going to have to outscore everybody. And hats off to CJ Carr and the rest of the offense and Mike Denbrock for putting us in a position to feel that way. So, I mean, in short, I would say the offense has been on fire, man.
Yeah, I would say steadily rising. Like, I think that that's the thing, is they're averaging almost 430 yards of total offense per game, and I don't think we've seen the best from it yet. Like, we've seen a different layer, a different level in each of these past couple of games, and what we saw against Purdue the other day, starting off with a deep shot. When's the last time we saw, it's like, hey, you've got this back in the backfield that defenses might be focused on. Let's play action to him and just drop it over the top to Malachi Fields. And then that's what it feels like this offense can go to, is like we've kind of started to see it opened up a little bit with some of those deep shots, and you've still got Jeremiah Love, and you've still got Jadarian Price, who can both be home run threats anytime they touch the football. And it's all with a first-time starting quarterback who's only getting a little bit better every time he takes the field. It's I don't think any of us thought that they would have to win football games the way it looks like they're going to have to win football games,
Man.
But it's kind of exciting to know that I think that they've still got a few different levels to unlock along the way, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, man, at the end of the day, we're talking about an offense right now. They're averaging 40 points a game, 265 passing yards a game. I mean, they're efficient pushing the ball down the field. I mean, they're averaging 14.2 yards per completion. Who would have thought we'd be having this conversation at this time last year?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe this is just bad karma on my part, because I sat down begging, hey, what would it look like if Notre Dame was getting into shootouts and not close games that were 17-10? But, what if they're getting into shootouts where it's, 38-35? And, well, I guess I'm eating my words now. But, I mean, at the end of the day, this offense has been really exciting. And to your point, Sean, I just don't think they've reached their peak yet. They're continually getting better.
Not by any, like just look at the fact that we haven't seen Jaden Greathouse really involved at all in an offensive game plan so far. Like, that's, again, like that's another level for them to unlock. Hopefully that becomes something that they unlock in the relative near future.
I sure am hoping so. There's still a lot of pieces left to unlock. I think of it like a video game. You know what I mean? Like, you have your core,
exactly.
You have your core characters unlocked, and you can use them.
That's right.
You keep leveling up, and then you're going to get Jaden Greathouse, and then you're going to get Aeneas Williams back with a healthy elbow, and Eli Raridan's going to start catching touchdowns here soon. Ty Washington's going to get involved, so it's really exciting.
Andre Tonsel, very optimistic in the YouTube chat. He says he believes we'll see that dominating defense Saturday against Arkansas. If I gave you a scale of 1 to 10, what is your confidence in a dominating defensive performance against Arkansas, Trevor?
Dominating? Scale of 1 to 10, but I mean, oh boy.
Can we just go good? Like, can we say a good defensive?
How about we just say decent defensive performance before I need decent before dominating, but I guess if I had to listen, Andre, if you're right, next time we're both in South Bend, I owe you a meal. If you're right about this, because man, I hope that you are, but my confidence right now is probably at like a modest 3.
Yeah, mine's 2 or 3. I mean, I think if they hold Arkansas below 30 points, that's probably going to be a success at this point. Don't you?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, they gave up
I'm
30
not trying
to
to
Purdue last week.
I'm just
Yeah.
being honest with what we've seen. Yeah, I mean, now the last touchdown, like you've got a bunch
Sure.
of reserves on the field and all that kind of stuff. Like I felt like I think what I said going into the game was I felt like 17 points when 17 points allowed to Purdue when the game was still a game, like before you got backups and stuff like that in the game. I think that would have been acceptable. Obviously, they gave up one more touchdown than that, so not too far off, but obviously we saw what the first half looked like. It left a lot to be desired. The question is, can they come close to replicating what they did in the second half? And I think we all know it's going to be a much bigger challenge against an Arkansas team that's averaging 500 yards of offense per game.
Yeah. I'll say this for any bettors out there. Hammer the over, baby. Hammer the over.
I mean, I think you're hammering overs on Notre Dame all season long.
Until shown otherwise, absolutely. Yes.
Exactly. Okay, so here is Marcus Freeman on Jadarian Price.
I'll say this every time you ask me about JD. Yes, he's talented, but he is the most unselfish individual, along with others on our team. And that's what I want to point out. Not his great play, not his touchdowns, but that guy, that individual could have the ball, be on the field every single play. But what does he do? He says, Coach, if you want J Love in there, put him in there. But when I get my opportunity, I'm going to make the most of it. If we have a team of unselfish individuals like that, and they continue to commit and be selfless and sacrifice, we will be pretty special. But that's what I always praise about that guy, because that's the trait that I want our players to emulate, not the talent, the touchdowns. It's the unselfishness that he displays.
That's absolutely, we completely agree with everything that Marcus Freeman is saying in terms of the unselfishness of Jadarian Price. Just 9 carries for 57 yards, but of course he scored 3 touchdowns on runs as well as the 100-yard kickoff return. Jeremiah Love had 19 carries for 157. Is like, do you like this split? Does Price need the ball more at all? Where are you on Jadarian Price, Trevor?
I think this might be somewhat of an unpopular opinion, but I love the rotation the way that it's set at now. Very, very few teams in the country, if any, have a change of pace running back like Jadarian Price. I say this with full confidence. JD could go and be the starting running back at the majority, if not all, of the Power 4 schools in the country and being a 1,000-yard running back.
Agree.
And I think that the way that they utilize him now, because you start breaking into the different schemes that they utilize, whether J Love is in the game or JD Price is in the game. And I love that rhythm of the offense. Could he take more carries? I think so. I think the next evolution for Jadarian Price is getting a little bit more involved in the pass game. I think teams are going to start catching on to, all right, Love's in the backfield. When they motion him out, they might try to get him the ball out in space. I think that's the next step for Jadarian Price. But as of right now, I kind of like the rhythm that they're at in this backfield.
Yeah, I think he's a really nice change of pace for Jeremiah Love. And honestly feels to me sometimes like when Jadarian Price comes in the game after Jeremiah Love has been in there, these defenses are focused so much on number 4 when Love is in the game. It's almost like they relax a little bit when Jadarian Price comes in, and he is showing you can't relax when 24 is in the game, because I'm still going to make you pay. I can still burn you. And, so it feels like that compliment to Jeremiah Love, like that's part of the success that Jadarian is able to have once he comes in.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, I think with how well that they performed, I think that they should be utilized on the field a little bit more together.
I think
that's something.
That's maybe the thing to me, and how you balance that with, how loaded you want the box and all those different kind of things. But again, when you show that you can hit deep shots to guys like Malachi Fields and Jordan Faison in 2 completely different kind of routes and 2 different kind of guys, I think that I think that you can capitalize on that by having both of those guys out there together.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, look, at the end of the day, Notre Dame just has two dynamic running backs. Somebody in the chat, I think Anthony Solomon in the chat said it's a perfect 1A, 1B scenario. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's almost interchangeable, by the way. And they each have their own strengths. I mean, one of the best ways that it's been explained to me is I think that Jeremiah Love is their best player, but Jadarian Price might be their most natural running back. And I think that that's the perfect way to talk about these two guys. There are things that Jeremiah Love can do that no other running back in the country can do. I don't know a whole lot of other running backs that are catching one-handed wheel routes and then trucking over a safety into the end zone. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I said this last year. I think Jadarian Price is the best lateral cutter on the football team.
Yeah, that's true.
Those are, I mean, they play to their strengths extremely, extremely well, man.
Yep, they do. And they just, I think that's the perfect way to put it, because like CNEP is saying lightning and thunder, but they're almost like two different kinds of lightning, really, when you think about it, and they both bring a little bit of thunder of their own as well. Love is still not afraid to drop the shoulder when he needs to. And JD is just built a little bit differently, so he can navigate some of that.
Agreed.
Fill in the blank. You feel blank about Notre Dame quarterback coach Gino Guidugli.
Confident. I mean, he was a major question mark coming into this season, Sean. I mean, we were talking about how, look, at the end of the day, we have yet to see a Notre Dame homegrown quarterback from Gino Guidugli.
Mm-hmm.
We saw, I guess you could make the argument for glimpses of Steve Angeli in the moments that he played. And in the moments that he played, he didn't disappoint. But that's not a full serving size to confidently say, yep, Gino Guidugli's kind of got this. Well, after hearing how close that quarterback battle was in fall camp, and then watching how CJ has performed, Gino Guidugli has instilled a ton of confidence in me in this quarterback room moving forward. And then you get into who they're bringing in. They're bringing in Noah Grubbs, and then they're bringing in hopefully Teddy Gerard, and then that'll start to build. But, man, Gino Guidugli has made me really confident in that room.
Absolutely. He was a little bit of an unknown coming into the season because of what you talked about, because he inherited a couple guys from other people's programs his first couple of years here with Hartman and then with Riley Leonard last year, with completely different skill sets, and the fact that in his first couple of years he had two different offensive coordinators, and so you're catering to different systems again with other people's other guys who came from other programs who, like, especially I think with Sam Hartman, kind of had his own programming in his head in terms of the system he came from, trying to get him accustomed to a new system, a more traditional offensive system. And now I think that because of Riley Leonard's inconsistencies as a passer last year, a lot of that was sort of passed off on Gino Guidugli. But to see a guy like CJ Carr to be now, obviously a lot of it has to do with CJ Carr's talents and the way he, his upbringing and all that kind of stuff. But you still have to give Gino Guidugli credit for having him prepared and ready to go. And again, he's gone up so far with every game. He's gone up. Like, think of the fact that, like, this guy could come in on the road down by double digits, lead you right back into the game, get you tied up late in the fourth quarter, and then next game, again, you're trailing. You've got to have points. He leads you down, and he gets you multiple scoring drives. You've got the lead late in the game. Unfortunately, in both cases, the defense can't quite finish it off. But Guidugli has had his pupil ready to go. So it's, as we said in the first hour of the show, stock rising for Gino Guidugli for me.
Oh, couldn't agree more. I mean, look, we're talking about a redshirt freshman quarterback that led either game-tying or go-ahead touchdown drives late in the fourth quarter against two ranked opponents.
Yeah.
I mean, that's impressive. And to your point, Sean, about the transfers that came in, look, man, at the end of the day, when you get a fifth year, Sam Hartman was a 6-year senior transfer, there's just habits that you almost have to, before you can begin building them up a little bit, you almost have to break them out of some bad habits. And I think some of that is what we saw with the first two quarterbacks in 23 and 24. So Gino's really impressed me, man.
Yeah, because Riley Leonard was still a much more raw piece of clay, I think. Yeah. Like in especially in comparison to Sam Hartman. But just like just an athlete coming out of high school who had his eyes set on playing basketball and who ended up parlaying it into what is now a professional football career. But there was just a stark differences in what Guidugli has worked with. Like in each case, in each of the 3 years, it's been completely different. So hats off to him. All right, so here is Marcus Freeman on Jordan Faison, who he touched on a second ago.
Consistency. He is 2 C's, competitive and consistent, right? And you know he's going to be exactly where he's supposed to be. He's going to block exactly who he's supposed to block, and every opportunity he gets. And that, I think, gives the quarterback confidence that, hey, I know exactly where Jordan Faison's going to be, and if I decide to throw it to him, it's probably going to be a successful outcome. And so, but that's a credit to the way he works, way he prepares. He's a consistent competitor.
Fill in the blank, Trevor. Jordan Faison's season has been blank so far.
I'm going to go with expected here. We talked a lot over the offseason and in the summer about the type of talent that Jordan Faison could be if he remained healthy. Health was kind of his biggest concern coming out of the 2024 season because, look, man, at the end of the day, he was off to a hot start, caught one pass against Texas A&M, gets rolled up on, and then is kind of inconsistently in and out of the lineup, gets healthy again against Army, catches a touchdown pass from Riley Leonard. And then in the first 2 playoff games, he was your most impressive wide receiver. And so health was a big thing for him. I love that Marcus Freeman used the word consistent because that's what he has been. You know, I mean, he had almost a 100-yard game against Indiana in the playoffs, had a 100-yard game against Purdue this past weekend. I mean, I think he has become a really good kind of complementary piece to what Malachi Fields brings to the table.
Yeah, I think he is having the season this year, Jordan Faison, that we expected he was going to have last year. But as you said, because of that high ankle sprain that he suffered right away against Texas A&M, it kept him from that ever happening. Now, again, the fact that you had a much more inconsistent quarterback and those kind of things, I think that played into it as well. But I mean, CJ Carr has already shown like he likes these 2 outside guys. They are his main targets, Malachi Fields and Jordan Faison. And, you know, so again, I feel like he came into this season a little bit under the radar, probably because of Malachi Fields and because of the expectations that were there for Jaden Greathouse. But, you know, again, I think he's having the kind of season we thought he was going to have last year, but it was just never able to happen because of that early injury. He was just never able to get on track. And now we're seeing what a fully healthy Jordan Faison can actually do.
Yeah, and it's been impressive. He's strong after the catch. That was the one aspect of his game that I wasn't entirely sure about, was his ability to finish runs. I knew he was shifty. He's a quick guy. He's more quick than he is fast, vertical speed. But look, man, he showed me a little bit of something in the Miami game. He was running with a purpose.
Yeah.
And he was not going down easily. Jordan Faison has really impressed me.
We'll take a break. When we come back, more rapid fire. Yes, we will talk about Mike Gundy and his dismissal today at Oklahoma State. That will be coming up as we continue with rapid fire and Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Rapid Fire and Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com continues. I'm Sean Stiers along with Trevor Trowbridge as we wind on through Rapid Fire here tonight. Interesting revelation from former Ohio State quarterback Will Howard on the Not Just Football podcast, hosted by Howard's Pittsburgh Steelers teammate and fellow former Ohio State Buckeye Cam Hayward. Here is the clip.
I was going to end up at Notre Dame. And a lot of people don't know this. Like, this was very under wraps. But they ended up signing Riley right before I was about to commit. I was about to commit that day. Like, I called my agent, and he's like, sorry, buddy. Like, they just told me they took Riley. And I was like, what? Like, they weren't even talking about it. So that pissed me off. And a lot of people didn't know that that had happened going into the national championship. So I remember, like, the general manager was standing on the sideline right where we were warming up, and I was just staring daggers through him the whole warm-up. Like, I was pissed.
All right, Trevor. So there is Will Howard, who, of course, played at Ohio State, helped them win a national championship in the championship game against Notre Dame last year. Would the Irish have been better had Will Howard been here instead of Riley Leonard?
No, I don't think so. And that's not because of those comments. Look, at the end of the day, one, that's just kind of the business of the transfer portal and NIL. One. And if you're going to be a quarterback in the NFL, they move you around like chess pieces. And it's just one of those things that, unfortunately, you're just going to have to get used to. One. Two, at the end of the day, I thought Ohio State was fantastic last season. I don't believe that they won the national championship because of Will Howard. I don't.
Agree.
It's not a mystery that every single year Ohio State has been successful. They've had a darn good run game. I mean, think about it, man. I mean, they won the national championship in 2014. They had Ezekiel Elliott. They had one of the best college football playoff semifinal performances in 2019 and almost handed Clemson and that Trevor Lawrence team their first loss before LSU eventually did it in the national championship. Who did they have? 2,000-yard rusher in J.K. Dobbins. Then they won the national championship last season. Who did they have? Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson, 2 1,000-yard running backs. And so, no, while Will Howard's performance in the national it really throughout the playoffs was exceptional, I don't think that they won because of Will Howard.
No, I don't either. I don't think by any means they did. They won because they obviously had a really good defense, and you talked about all the talent that he had around him. I mean, look at what Emeka Egbuka has done so far in Tampa Bay, and obviously Jeremiah Smith. There was just like, if you just look at the numbers, Riley Leonard was a little bit actually more accomplished as a passer in his time at Duke than Will Howard was at Kansas State. Like if you just look at the numbers and, like the numbers that they had put up coming in, like you would have said, go get Riley Leonard. And he was a better runner of the football as well. He looked like the better true dual threat guy. Again, unfortunately, we didn't quite see the passing element of Riley Leonard until a little bit, down the road, but I don't think that Notre Dame would have been better off with Will Howard at all.
No, man. I mean, look, Riley Leonard was the perfect quarterback for the makeup of last year's team. Because think about it this way. Will Howard would have had an offense. He did have an offense last year where he was throwing to Emeka Egbuka, Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, and had those 2 1,000-yard running backs out of the backfield. Put him in South Bend. And with all due respect to Notre Dame's wide receiver core last year, Bo Collins and a sophomore season Jaden Greathouse and a Chris Mitchell and a banged-up Jordan Faison is not the same as Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka, and Carnell Tate.
Exactly.
It just isn't.
Yeah.
And Riley Leonard was a significantly better runner than what Will Howard was. Will Howard's athletic. I don't want to paint this picture that he was some stiff in the pocket. He's not like me. I had the mobility of an office chair on carpet. Okay. I'm not getting any sort of rushing yards on no matter what team I play behind. But at the end of the day, Will Howard's not rushing for 906 yards and 17 rushing touchdowns. Again, I mean,
exactly.
That's just how to, because think of a game like the Ohio State-Michigan game last year. That is a game where Riley Leonard would have taken it over with his legs. You know how I know that? We watched Georgia's defense try to shut down any resemblance of a passing game that Notre Dame had in the Sugar Bowl. Riley Leonard ended the game with 80 rushing yards.
Right.
And that's the difference.
The Chad Bowden dagger glare that he gave him the national championship game. Thought that was interesting. Like, was there a little double cross there, or like, I don't know.
It's I said it a little bit hyperbolically when we first started talking, but look, at the end of the day, transparency is big when it comes down to this stuff. And I don't know what happened behind the scenes, but if if he had no knowledge that they were looking at other quarterbacks, which might have forced Will Howard's hand to make a decision quicker, then maybe there needs to be a little bit more transparency on Chad Bowden's side. But at the end of the day, I think each team got the quarterback that was the right fit for them.
I think so too. Look, when you're in the transfer portal, like when you're a team looking into the transfer portal, it's just like when you're recruiting guys out of high school. You are actively recruiting them, and that window is pretty short. You've got to. It's like, okay, you need a decision. We need a decision. You needed it. This stuff happens pretty quickly. Obviously, they were talking to both of them, and Riley Leonard was willing to pull the trigger a little bit quicker. So I think this kind of stuff, I'm sure, happens with everybody every year. Very rare that they end up actually meeting in the national championship game, though.
Yeah, kind of a poetic ending, I guess you could say, for how that went down.
Right. Fill in the blank. Oklahoma State firing head coach Mike Gundy today is blank.
Unfortunately expected. He was one of the quarterbacks. Good Lord. He was one of the head coaches on the top of he was a quarterback, but he was one of the head coaches at the top of my list on the hot seat this season. And it's unfortunate because, he was at Oklahoma State for so long. The fact that from 2006 to 2023, he led Oklahoma State to the postseason every single year, that is so impressive. That is so impressive. And not the playoffs or, every year wasn't a New Year's Six bowl. But from 2006 to 2023, he had Oklahoma State playing in some sort of bowl game.
Yeah.
And that speaks volumes. But at the end of the day, man, you get this you get this. A lot of people in the chat will get this. It is a performance-based industry. And unfortunately, when your team isn't performing, somebody's got to, pay the piper.
We're in Dabo Swinney territory, in terms of how these coaches adapt to the current state. Like, doesn't 2021 and that Fiesta Bowl when Notre Dame played Oklahoma State, doesn't that almost seem like a million years ago at this point? Like, when you look at, just how the game of football and the sport and just everything has changed since then.
Oh yeah.
Like history.
Oh, it does. It feels like forever ago. Shoot, we're talking about an Oklahoma State team that played for the Big 12 in 2023.
Yeah.
And had guys like Ali Gordon returning to the roster in 2024, and you go 3-9.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then this year you start off 1-2. It's rough.
They did wait until one day after the 18-year anniversary of the "I'm a man, I'm 40" speech, by the way. Yesterday, 18 years to the day, they waited a day, and he's a man. He's 58, and now, unfortunately for him, he's looking for a job. But the winningest coach in Oklahoma State history by a long shot. Like, I think he's got it by 100 wins or something like that. There's a long track record of just football for Oklahoma State, having grown up in Kansas and that part of the country, and Big 8 and then Big 12 times. He led the Cowboys to 8 10-win seasons in his 21 years at Oklahoma State. In the previous 104 seasons, had just 3 double-win seasons. So what he did in his time there was truly amazing, but a failure to adapt to the times, and they've just gotten a little bit worse each of the last few years, and that's why you are where you are right now. $15 million buyout, really not that big, all things considered. That's what they'll have to pay him. I do wonder if maybe he ends up at another Power 4 school within a couple of years.
You hope so.
What other athletic directors think of him, in terms of his coaching ability? Because it is, like in the state of Oklahoma, it's obviously Oklahoma, and then Oklahoma State is down here, like in terms of how they're perceived and national brands and all that kind of stuff. But as you said, Gundy had him winning for a long time in his time there in Stillwater.
Yeah, it was one of those where like nostalgia starts to kick in. I became a big college football fan in 2005, and obviously knew who Mike Gundy was, especially because of the press conference. I'm a man. I'm 40. And I was walking around, middle school, high school hallways, talking about that stuff. You know what I mean? And so,
I'm 40.
yeah. I mean, we'd be out on the practice field and just screaming it out. You know what I mean? Like, it's just whenever you get, chewed out by a coach, you just walk back to the huddle under your breath. Oh, man, I'm 40. Come on. Like, you know what I mean? So it stinks for him. But at the end of the day, performance-based industry, it's tough. But his legacy there was really, really impressive.
Last time out of the show, and then we're back with a few more rapid-fire topics. Sean Steyer's, Trevor Trowbridge, Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. winding down rapid fire in Budweiser's weekday sports beat with irishbreakdown.com. Along with Trevor Trowbridge, I'm Sean Stiers. Fill in the blank, Trevor. It's blank that the ACC has agreed to go to a 9-game conference football schedule while also requiring its teams to play against 10 Power 4 teams per year.
Well, again, this might be unpopular. I think it's a little lame. Look, man, I know everybody wants the uniformity, especially people in the Big Ten conference and fans of the Big Ten. But look, at the end of the day, I'm more focused on the quality of opponents that you play than the level of conference games that you play. Look, at the end of the day, outside of Ohio State, the ACC, I thought this season especially did a pretty good job of scheduling out of conference. You had Clemson taking on LSU in the opener. You had Florida State taking on Alabama in the opener. I don't really know what 9 conference games does for you, if I'm being 100% honest. I think that's going to be interesting for the Notre Dame Clemson deal moving forward. But look, there's this idea that if you play in a conference, every single conference game that you play is just so much harder than any other game that you could possibly play.
Right. Like the whole Big Ten argument. Like they kept trying to force everybody else to play the extra conference game when you like, just because it's an extra conference game doesn't mean it's a quality opponent that you're playing.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, look, the Big Ten makes the argument is, we play 9 conference games. Like, yeah, and you're out of conference schedule. If you're Penn State, you're Penn State's the number AP ranked 3rd team in the country. And so far this year, they've played Villanova, FIU, and Nevada. I don't love it. I get the uniformity. People will think that's a better measuring tool. But now that these conferences are so big, it's not like you're playing equal competition. Again, exactly. Sean, one of the last episodes you and I were on, you and I were talking about Wisconsin's football schedule and how rigorous that was.
That's right.
Now, every Big Ten team isn't playing Wisconsin's schedule.
Or Purdue's schedule.
Or Purdue's schedule. Or, that's the biggest difference.
That might sound funny, but as we've said, like if you actually look at Purdue's schedule the last couple of years, they've played about as tough a schedule. Probably they've definitely played a tougher schedule the last 2 years than Indiana has had to play, for example, or Penn State for that matter.
Yeah, absolutely. So I personally think it's a little lame. I understand overarching big picture what they're trying to do, but now that you have 16, 17, 18 team leagues, you can schedule 9 conference games all you want. You get away with playing the top 3 in your conference.
And I agree with your sentiment on the 9 conference games. Now, to me, what's interesting is the requirement that like what the SEC has, which the Big Ten I don't think has yet, but the SEC does have it with making, okay, you're playing 9 conference games, but they're also requiring you to play a 10th Power 4 school. So you can't just load up on a bunch of FCS or lower level, group of 6 type teams. I think that helps Notre Dame when it comes to the ability to continue to be able to schedule some of these teams. Like you talked about the Clemson series. I think that's good for Notre Dame that both the ACC and the SEC, and I think, I don't know if the Big 12 has it yet. They definitely have the 9 conference games, but like the fact that these conferences are requiring their teams to play a 10th Power 4 school, I think that that's good for Notre Dame down the road, because like you can't just bail and say, we're going to play another Mercer or whoever it happens to be. Like that keeps that out there for Notre Dame.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think the overall product on the field is going to be better because of that. People aren't going to be scheduling a lot of North Dakotas, or people aren't going to be scheduling a bunch of Alabama A&Ms. So in that retrospect, I get it. But big picture, it's just one of those where
we've got to wrap up with that. Trevor, appreciate you jumping in tonight. As always, I'll talk to you again soon. We've got we've got a show coming up tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.